The first call came in at 2:13 a.m. during the worst wildfire season our state had ever seen. I was alone inside Black Ridge Fire Lookout Tower watching lightning storms roll across miles of burning forest when the emergency radio crackled alive beside me. At first I thought it was another evacuation request. Then I heard the voice. "Please answer." Weak, distorted, like someone speaking through smoke. I grabbed the receiver immediately. "This is Black Ridge Lookout. Identify yourself." Static hissed loudly for several seconds. Then the caller answered, "You already know me." Something about the voice felt familiar instantly. Too familiar. I checked the radio frequency. Dead channel. Nobody had used it in years. The tower windows rattled as heavy wind pushed smoke across the mountain outside. Far below me, entire sections of forest glowed orange beneath the spreading wildfire. Emergency crews had already evacuated most nearby towns hours earlier. Only a few lookout towers still remained active through the mountains, mine included. The voice returned softer this time. "You need to leave before sunrise." I frowned. "Who is this?" No answer. Only breathing. Slow, painful breathing. Then the caller whispered one sentence that made my blood freeze instantly. "You watched me burn." The radio cut dead. I stared at the receiver for several seconds trying to remember where I recognized the voice from. Then it hit me. Daniel Mercer. A firefighter from Station 14. 3 years ago his crew got trapped during the Hollow Creek wildfire 20 miles north of Black Ridge. Only 2 bodies were ever recovered. Daniel wasn't one of them. Official reports claimed the fire consumed him completely, but I still remembered hearing his voice over emergency radio the night his team disappeared, begging for extraction while the forest burned around them. A loud knock suddenly echoed from the tower staircase below me. 3 slow knocks. Nobody should have been on the mountain anymore. The evacuation roads were already closed behind the fire lines. I grabbed my flashlight and leaned carefully toward the stairwell entrance. Hello. No answer. Only wind howling outside the tower. Then the emergency radio activated again behind me by itself. Daniel's voice whispered through heavy static, "Don't open the door." Another knock echoed from the staircase below, closer this time, and somewhere far beneath the tower. I heard someone climbing the mountain steps slowly through the smoke. The footsteps continued climbing toward the tower. Slow, heavy. Metal stairs groaned beneath each step rising from the darkness below. I locked the stairwell hatch immediately. The old steel latch barely held together anymore after years of storms and rust. Another knock echoed from directly beneath the trapdoor. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. Smoke drifted through the tower windows thicker now, turning the moon outside dark red above the burning forest. The emergency radio crackled again. "Is it still outside?" Daniel whispered. I backed away from the stairwell hatch. "What are you talking about?" Static hissed loudly. Then his voice answered, "It follows the fire." A loud scratching sound dragged slowly across the underside of the hatch beneath my feet, like fingernails scraping metal. My flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. "Daniel, where are you?" Several seconds passed before he answered. "Still in the woods." The signal distorted violently afterward, mixed with distant screaming somewhere behind him. Not one voice. Many. The tower lights flickered hard enough to briefly plunge the room into darkness. And for 1 second, I saw movement outside among the burning trees below the mountain. People. Dozens of them. Standing motionless between the flames. Watching the tower. When the lights stabilized again, they were gone. The scratching beneath the hatch suddenly stopped. Then a new voice came through the radio. A woman crying softly. "Please help us." Different voice. Different frequency. I checked the monitor beside the radio again. Dead channels. Every single transmission now came through disconnected emergency lines that shouldn't even function anymore. The woman continued speaking through static. "We're trapped near Hollow Creek." My stomach dropped instantly. Hollow Creek burned down 3 years ago during the same wildfire that killed Daniel's crew. Nobody still lived there. Then the woman whispered, "It's wearing their faces now." A violent slam hit the tower hatch beneath me hard enough to bend the metal upward slightly. I stumbled backward. Another impact followed immediately after. Something below the tower was trying to force its way inside. The woman on the radio started crying harder. "You can't let it reach the fire lines." The hatch slammed again. This time the lights inside the tower went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Outside, the wildfire below illuminated the windows in deep orange flashes while smoke rolled across the mountain. Then came breathing from directly beneath the hatch. Wet, slow, and not human. The radio crackled one final time before dying completely. And Daniel whispered, "It learned how to sound like us." The thing beneath the hatch stopped moving. No scratching. No breathing. Nothing. That somehow felt worse. I stood frozen inside the dark lookout tower listening to the wildfire raging through the mountains below while smoke thickened around the windows. Then the emergency backup generator activated automatically. Dim red lights flooded the tower interior. And I finally saw the footprints. Burned footprints. Black ash tracks crossing the wooden floor behind me, leading from the radio desk toward the observation windows. My blood turned cold instantly. The hatch beneath me was still locked. Nothing could have entered. But the ash footprints continued across the tower floor anyway, like something burned had walked silently through the room while the lights were out. Another radio frequency suddenly activated by itself. This time several voices spoke together through overlapping static. Firefighters. Panicked. Shouting coordinates. Screaming for water support. Old emergency recordings. I recognized some of the names immediately. Every crew lost during the Hollow Creek wildfire. The voices kept overlapping faster and louder until one sentence repeated clearly above the chaos, "It's in the trees." A loud crack echoed outside. One of the burning pines below the tower collapsed into the forest, sending a wave of sparks into the smoke-filled air. And for a split second, the fire illuminated something massive moving between the trees. Too tall. Its shape constantly shifted behind the smoke like burning bodies twisting together into one enormous figure. The tower suddenly shook hard. Something had started climbing the exterior supports from outside. Metal groaned beneath the weight. Slow impacts echoed upward around the structure itself now. Not the stairs. The walls. I backed away from the windows as another impact hit closer overhead. Then came tapping against the glass beside me. Soft, patient tapping. I turned slowly toward the observation window overlooking the burning forest, and standing upside down outside the glass was Daniel Mercer, or something pretending to be him. His fire suit looked melted directly into blackened skin while glowing cracks spread across his body like burning wood. But the worst part was his face. Half of it had burned away completely, and the remaining half smiled at me. Then more burned faces slowly appeared behind him through the smoke outside the tower windows. Watching. Dozens of them. All from crews officially declared dead years ago. Daniel lifted one burned finger slowly and pointed toward the forest below. At first I thought the wildfire itself was spreading uphill toward the tower. Then I realized the flames were moving wrong. The fire wasn't spreading naturally anymore. It was climbing the mountain in the shape of footsteps. The fire climbed the mountain like something alive, not spreading randomly through dry forest. Walking. Each explosion of flame appeared in slow deliberate patterns ascending directly toward Black Ridge Tower through the smoke. Step, 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 like gigantic burning footprints moving uphill. Daniel's burned face remained pressed against the tower glass upside down, watching me silently. Then his mouth opened wider than humanly possible, and every radio inside the tower activated together. Screaming. Hundreds of voices flooded the room simultaneously. Missing firefighters, dispatch operators, emergency calls, people trapped inside burning homes, all overlapping into one deafening wall of panic. I smashed the nearest radio off the desk. The voices continued anyway, coming from outside now, from the burning forest itself. The dead crews were calling to each other through the smoke. Then Daniel spoke directly through the glass. Not muffled, not distorted, perfectly clear despite standing outside 50 feet above the ground. It remembers the ones who burned. The tower shook violently again. Metal support beams screamed beneath something massive climbing upward through the smoke below. I forced myself toward the opposite observation window overlooking the northern slope, and immediately wished I hadn't. The forest below wasn't empty anymore. Hundreds of burned figures slowly walked through the wildfire beneath the trees. Firefighters, civilians, children, all blackened beyond recognition, still moving. Some carried melted radios in their hands, endlessly repeating emergency transmissions through static. Others dragged burned axes behind them through the dirt, and all of them climbed toward the tower together. A loud alarm suddenly activated from the old fire watch computer near the radio desk. Wildfire containment line breached. The northern firebreak had collapsed. If the flames crossed Black Ridge, they would spread directly toward the evacuated towns beyond the mountains by sunrise. Then the emergency map screen changed by itself. A blinking red dot appeared deep inside Hollow Creek Forest, the origin point of the original fire 3 years ago, and around it, something moved underground. Huge. The entire terrain map distorted every few seconds like the forest itself breathed around the red marker. Daniel suddenly slammed against the glass hard enough to crack it. His burned smile vanished instantly. Now he looked terrified. Don't let it cross the ridge. Another impact shook the tower from below. This time one of the exterior support beams snapped loudly somewhere beneath the structure. The tower leaned slightly sideways, and through the smoke below, I finally saw what had been climbing toward me. At first it looked like several burned bodies tangled together. Then it stepped partially into the wildfire. Thousands of human arms formed its legs. Its body constantly shifted from screaming faces fused together beneath burning flesh. And buried somewhere inside the giant thing, hundreds of emergency radios crackled endlessly through the fire, all transmitting the exact same message: stay out of the trees. The creature reached the base of Black Ridge Tower just after 3 a.m. I felt it before I saw it. The entire structure vibrated beneath deep wet impacts echoing upward through the steel supports below the observation room. The burned figures surrounding the forest suddenly stopped moving all at once. Every melted face turned toward the giant thing climbing through the wildfire beneath them, like worshippers. Then every radio transmission in the tower cut dead simultaneously. Silence. Absolute silence except for the fire roaring across the mountainside. The cracked observation window beside Daniel suddenly fogged from heat outside, and slowly, something enormous passed through the smoke beyond the glass. An eye. Huge, burning orange beneath layers of ash and black flesh. It moved upward along the tower exterior, slowly scanning the windows, looking for me. I backed away instinctively. The tower lights flickered violently again, and the old emergency computer suddenly displayed archived footage from Hollow Creek Fire Station dated 3 years earlier. Security camera footage. Daniel's crew. I stared at the screen in disbelief while the recording played automatically. The firefighters inside the station looked terrified. Smoke already filled the hallways behind them while emergency alarms screamed through the building. One firefighter kept shouting, "It came out of the fire line." Then the camera outside the station captured something massive moving between the burning trees beyond the parking lot. The footage distorted immediately. Not from damage. Like the camera physically couldn't process what it saw. Then Daniel appeared on screen covered in ash, screaming into a radio, "Do not let it burn." The recording ended in static. A second later the lookout tower shook so violently several windows shattered outward into the smoke-filled night. The thing outside had started climbing higher. Burning hands larger than car doors wrapped slowly around the tower supports beneath me. Every finger formed from fused human bodies still twitching inside the flames. And then, the radios came alive again. But this time the voices sounded calm. Too calm. Children's voices. Softly singing somewhere inside the forest below. An old evacuation song firefighters taught during wildfire drills. The burned figures in the woods began singing too. Hundreds of dead voices together beneath the flames. Daniel stared at me through the cracked glass with genuine fear now. It uses the smoke. The wildfire around Black Ridge suddenly changed direction. Impossible against the wind. The flames bent uphill toward the evacuation towns beyond the ridge like they were being pulled somewhere. Controlled. Then the giant eye outside the tower blinked slowly, and every burned figure in the forest copied it simultaneously. The tower emergency map updated again. Red warning symbols spread across every nearby county. The fire was no longer behaving naturally. Entire containment lines were disappearing in minutes. Then a new emergency alert appeared across the screen: national evacuation failure, communication lost with all northern fire zones. Before I could process it, something massive slammed directly into the tower from below. The entire structure tilted sideways violently. Metal screamed. Support beams snapped. And far beneath me, through the smoke and flames, I saw the mountain itself opening. The mountain split open beneath Black Ridge Tower. At first I thought the wildfire triggered a landslide somewhere below the cliffs. Then the ground itself began moving. Huge cracks spread through the burning forest while entire sections of trees collapsed inward, disappearing into darkness beneath the mountain. The creature climbing the tower suddenly stopped. Every burned face fused into its body turned downward toward the opening below, afraid. Then all the dead firefighters surrounding the tower started screaming, not attacking, not advancing, screaming in panic. The tower leaned farther sideways as another support beam snapped beneath me. I grabbed the emergency desk to stay upright while ash and sparks poured through the shattered observation windows. And from deep inside the opening beneath the mountain, light emerged. Not fire. Something darker. A red glow pulsing slowly beneath the earth like a giant heartbeat hidden underground. The radios exploded alive again. Every frequency at once. Military channels. Emergency broadcasts. Civilian calls. All flooded by one repeating transmission spoken through distorted static: seal the firebreak. The burned thing outside the tower suddenly climbed faster. Desperate now. Thousands of fused arms dragged its body upward through the flames, trying to reach the observation deck before whatever lived below emerged completely. Daniel slammed violently against the cracked glass. It's waking up. The mountain below split wider. And then I saw them. Shapes moving beneath the earth. Enormous human silhouettes buried impossibly deep below the forest. Not one. Hundreds. Standing motionless underneath the mountain itself like giants trapped beneath stone and roots for centuries. Their eyes glowed faintly red through the cracks opening across the ridge. The wildfire changed instantly. Every flame across the forest bent downward toward the opening in the earth like air being sucked underground. The fire wasn't spreading anymore. It was feeding something. Then the giant creature climbing the tower looked directly at me for the first time, and all the screaming faces fused into its body spoke together, "Don't let it see the sky." The tower finally began collapsing. One entire side of the structure tore loose from the mountainside, sending metal stairs spiraling into the wildfire below. I barely caught myself against the radio desk as the observation room tilted violently toward the burning forest. Outside the shattered windows, the dead crews started running, not toward the tower, away from the mountain, terrified. Then the red glow beneath the earth suddenly brightened, and one colossal eye slowly opened inside the mountain below Black Ridge, bigger than the tower itself. Watching from beneath the burning forest, the creature outside released a scream so loud the remaining windows exploded outward instantly. Then the eye beneath the mountain looked up toward me, and every fire across the entire forest went out simultaneously. Every fire in the forest died instantly. Not slowly. Not naturally. 1 second the entire mountain burned beneath waves of orange flame. The next, complete darkness swallowed Black Ridge. Smoke still drifted through the trees, but now the forest stood silent beneath cold moonlight and falling ash. Even the giant creature clinging to the tower froze motionless, terrified. The colossal eye beneath the mountain remained open, watching the surface through the massive cracks splitting the earth below. And suddenly I understood something horrifying. The wildfire had never been the danger. It had been a cage. The thing below Black Ridge had been asleep beneath the mountain for centuries, and the fires kept it buried. The dead firefighters surrounding the forest kept retreating deeper into the woods in panic while emergency radios echoed faintly through the darkness around them. Daniel still clung upside down outside the shattered observation window. But now his burned expression looked desperate. "You have to relight the ridge." The tower groaned violently again. Without the wildfire below, the massive creature wrapped around the structure became fully visible in the moonlight. Thousands of burned human bodies fused together into one towering shape, now slowly pulling away from Black Ridge, retreating from the eye beneath the mountain. Afraid. Then the ground below moved again, not shaking, breathing. Entire sections of forest rose and fell slowly like lungs beneath the earth. The radios inside the tower suddenly activated with a new voice. Deep, ancient, not human. The sky is open. The sound came from everywhere at once. The mountain, the radios, inside my skull. The dead firefighters throughout the forest screamed louder immediately after hearing it. Then the giant eye beneath Black Ridge blinked slowly, and all the burned figures collapsed to their knees facing the opening in the earth, worshipping. Daniel slammed both burned hands against the glass. If it reaches daylight, his voice suddenly distorted violently. The thing inside him was losing control. Black smoke poured from his burned mouth while glowing cracks spread deeper beneath his skin. Then all the emergency radios around the tower began broadcasting old evacuation orders from different years, different states, different wildfires. Same exact warnings. Do not approach the burn zones after dark. Do not respond to voices in the smoke. Fire crews are to abandon containment immediately. The warnings repeated faster and faster, overlapping together through static. Then the mountain cracked open wider. A gigantic hand slowly emerged from beneath the earth below Black Ridge. Not burning. Stone. Its surface looked carved directly from black rock covered in ancient symbols glowing red beneath layers of ash. And around the wrist, massive chains dragged through the mountain. The same chains from the old mining legends locals used to whisper about near Hollow Creek. The creature outside the tower released another terrified scream and began fleeing into the dead forest below. The giant stone hand ignored it completely. Instead, the enormous eye beneath the mountain stayed focused directly on me. Watching. Learning. Then every radio inside the tower spoke together in the same ancient voice. You opened the door. The tower should have collapsed hours ago. Only 2 support beams still connected Black Ridge Lookout to the mountain while the structure leaned dangerously over the dark forest below. And beneath it all, the gigantic stone hand kept rising from inside the earth. Chains thicker than train tunnels dragged behind the wrist, tearing entire sections of mountain apart as the thing slowly pulled itself upward from beneath Hollow Creek. The ancient voice still echoed through every radio. You opened the door. I backed away from the observation windows instinctively. I didn't do anything. The eye beneath the mountain blinked once. Then all the radios answered together. You let the fire die. My stomach dropped. The wildfire had never been destroying the mountain. It had been sealing whatever existed beneath it. Every year the fires returned. Every year firefighters disappeared near Hollow Creek. Not accidents. Containment. Daniel stared at me through the shattered glass desperately. You have to burn the ridge again before sunrise. The dead forest below suddenly moved. Not the trees. The shadows between them. Massive shapes drifted silently through the darkness surrounding Black Ridge now that the flames were gone. Too large to be human. Too many limbs. Watching the mountain opening from a distance. Even they seemed afraid of whatever was waking beneath the earth. The creature made from burned bodies had vanished completely into the woods. Running. Then the radios crackled violently again. Military channels. Live transmissions. Real ones this time. We lost contact with northern containment. Entire fire zones just went dark. Something is moving underground toward the county lines. Gunfire echoed behind one transmission. Then screaming. The signal cut instantly. Outside the tower, ash began falling upward into the sky instead of down. Like gravity around Black Ridge was slowly breaking. The stone hand beneath the mountain suddenly tightened into a fist, and every tree across the forest bent inward toward the opening in the earth simultaneously. The mountain breathed again, louder this time. The sound resembled thousands of people inhaling together deep beneath the ground. Then another hand emerged beside the first one, even larger. Daniel's expression changed instantly from fear to hopelessness. Oh God, the earth below Black Ridge split apart completely, and something began pulling itself upward from inside the mountain. Not fast, slow, deliberate, like it had been trapped for an impossibly long time. The radios around me suddenly started playing archived recordings from different decades. Firefighters from the 1970s, miners from the 1930s, old emergency operators, all describing the same thing hidden beneath Hollow Creek. The thing under the mountain hates the sky. We were told the fires keep it asleep. Never let the ridge go cold. Then the tower lights died one final time. Only moonlight illuminated the forest now, and standing silently throughout the dead trees surrounding Black Ridge, I saw hundreds of enormous stone figures watching the mountain awaken. Buried giants, waiting for something to return. The buried giants surrounding Black Ridge remained completely motionless beneath the moonlight. Hundreds of them stood between the trees, half covered in ash and roots, like ancient statues forgotten beneath the forest for centuries. Except they were watching. All of them. Their glowing red eyes reflected faintly through the darkness surrounding the mountain. And in the center of Black Ridge, something enormous continued rising from beneath Hollow Creek. The earth cracked wider with every movement. Entire cliffs collapsed inward while old mining tunnels beneath the mountain opened like wounds across the forest floor. The radios inside the dying towers suddenly activated again. This time no static. Only one terrified voice repeating the same sentence over and over. Sunrise is close. Daniel slammed his burned fist against the shattered window desperately. You don't understand what happens if it sees daylight. Before I answered, the giant stone hand beneath the mountain finally grabbed the edge of the ridge itself and pulled. The sound shook the entire valley. Thousands of trees snapped apart while part of Black Ridge collapsed inward, revealing something massive buried beneath layers of stone and ash. A face. Not human. Not completely. Its surface looked carved from black rock, and burned flesh fused together beneath glowing symbols older than the mining towns themselves. And where its eyes should have been, empty darkness moved like smoke. The buried giants surrounding the forest all lowered their heads instantly, worshipping. Then every radio in the tower screamed with feedback loud enough to make me collapse against the floor. The ancient voice returned inside my skull. The fire was never for you. Outside the tower, the sky above the mountains suddenly changed color. Not sunrise. The stars themselves were disappearing, one by one, like something enormous moved behind them. Daniel looked upward toward the sky, and for the first time since appearing outside the tower, he screamed in fear. The dead firefighters throughout the forest started fleeing blindly between the trees. The stone giants did not move. They simply watched the thing beneath Hollow Creek continue climbing toward the surface. Then the emergency computer inside the tower activated one final archived file automatically. Classified Wildfire Containment Protocol, date 1974. The document scrolled by itself across the screen. Seasonal fires around Hollow Creek are to be maintained at all costs. Under no circumstances allow full extinguishment within the northern ridge. Entity displays extreme aversion to direct solar exposure. Then the final line appeared: daylight weakens containment. My blood froze. Not destroys it. Weakens it. Daniel whispered the next words before I could. The sun lets it out. The giant thing beneath the mountain slowly lifted its face higher toward the fading night sky, waiting for dawn. And somewhere far above the clouds, something impossibly massive moved toward Earth. The stars above Black Ridge kept disappearing, not hidden by clouds, not fading naturally. Something enormous was moving across the sky beyond the atmosphere itself, blocking them out one by one. The buried giants throughout the forest slowly raised their heads toward it in silence, waiting. Below the collapsing ridge, the colossal thing trapped beneath Hollow Creek continued dragging itself upward from the mountain. Its stone-covered body cracked apart layers of earth like paper, while ancient chains stretched tight across the valley, groaning beneath impossible pressure. And the worst part, the thing wasn't trying to escape anymore. It was waiting for sunrise. Daniel climbed halfway through the shattered observation window, desperately reaching toward me with burned hands. You still have time to relight the ridge. I stared at the dead forest below. No fire remained anywhere. Only smoke, ash, and the enormous opening beneath the mountain glowing faintly red from something ancient moving below. How? Daniel pointed weakly toward the old emergency fuel tanks hanging beneath the tower supports. Backup wildfire ignition systems, used decades ago to create controlled burns during containment failures. The ancient voice inside the radios immediately reacted. Do not burn the mountain. Every buried giant surrounding the forest suddenly looked directly toward the tower, watching us. Then something moved high above the clouds. Huge. For one brief second, moonlight illuminated a shape impossibly large, drifting silently through the upper atmosphere. Not a creature. A hand. A gigantic pale hand reaching downward toward Earth itself. Daniel saw it too, and panic spread across his burned face instantly. It found this place. The mountain below violently trembled. The stone giant emerging from Hollow Creek suddenly lifted one enormous arm upward toward the sky. Not attacking. Greeting. The radios erupted into screams again. Old recordings. Thousands of them. Every wildfire emergency transmission connected to Hollow Creek across the last century, flooding the tower simultaneously. Burn the ridge. Do not let it see the dawn. It calls to the things above the sky. The overlapping voices became unbearable. Then all the buried giants surrounding the forest opened their mouths together and screamed. The sound shook the mountain hard enough to finally tear Black Ridge Tower loose from its foundation. The observation room tilted sharply sideways over the collapsing valley. Metal snapped beneath me. The tower was falling. Daniel grabbed my arm just before I slid toward the shattered windows overlooking the abyss below. Then the first ray of sunlight appeared beyond the distant mountains, and the giant thing beneath Hollow Creek smiled. Every buried giant across the forest immediately dropped to their knees. The enormous pale hand above the clouds began descending lower through the atmosphere, and all the radios inside the collapsing tower whispered the same sentence together: the door is open now. Sunlight touched the mountains at 5:41 a.m., and everything changed instantly. The first golden rays crossing Black Ridge struck the giant stone face emerging from Hollow Creek below. The creature screamed, not from pain, from relief. The sound exploded across the valley like a living earthquake. Every buried giant throughout the forest lifted their heads toward the dawn simultaneously, while cracks spread across their stone bodies, glowing bright red beneath the surface. The ancient chains wrapped around the thing beneath the mountain began breaking apart one by one. Daniel dragged me across the collapsing observation room floor while Black Ridge Tower tilted farther over the abyss below. You have to ignite the tanks now. The emergency fuel controls hung near the shattered radio desk, blinking weakly beneath failing power. Outside, the enormous pale hand descending through the clouds lowered closer toward Earth itself. Its fingers stretched across the sky wider than entire mountain ranges, and the giant emerging from Hollow Creek reached upward toward it, calling something down. The radios erupted again, but now the voices sounded terrified. Not human voices. The buried giants. All of them speaking together through the emergency frequencies in deep stone-like whispers. It must not leave the valley. The first chain snapped completely beneath the mountain. The sound shook forests for miles, and suddenly, the stone giant beneath Hollow Creek began standing up. Its upper body rose above the collapsing ridge, towering higher than Black Ridge itself, while ancient symbols burned across its cracked surface like molten lava beneath stone skin. Where sunlight touched it, the creature became stronger, not weaker. The old containment reports lied. The fires kept it asleep. Darkness kept it trapped. But daylight woke it fully. Daniel saw the realization hit me. That's why the towns were evacuated every season, he whispered. Another chain exploded apart below us. The gigantic pale hand above the clouds descended lower through the atmosphere, now partially visible beyond the sunrise. And attached to that hand, something even larger waited beyond the sky. The mountains suddenly split open completely. The stone giant pulled one leg free from the earth beneath Hollow Creek for the first time in centuries, and every buried giant throughout the forest bowed deeply toward it, worshipping. The radios around the tower repeated one final emergency protocol through static. Authorized ignition required immediately. I grabbed the fuel ignition switch. Daniel looked toward the valley below where the giant thing reached higher toward the sky itself. Then he whispered, "If the ridge burns again, neither of us leaves." The pale hand above the clouds suddenly opened wider, and thousands of enormous eyes began opening across the morning sky behind it. The ignition switch shook in my hand while Black Ridge Tower collapsed around us. Below the mountain, the giant stone entity had almost fully risen from Hollow Creek. Its body towered above the valley, now covered in glowing red fractures spreading across ancient black stone like magma beneath cracked earth. And high above the sunrise, the thing waiting beyond the sky descended lower. Thousands of colossal eyes opened behind the clouds, watching the valley below, watching the giant waking beneath the mountain. Daniel grabbed my arm hard. "Now!" I slammed the ignition switch downward. For one horrible second, nothing happened. Then deep beneath the mountain, old fuel lines buried across Black Ridge ignited simultaneously. The entire valley erupted into fire. Walls of flame exploded upward through the forest surrounding Hollow Creek, while buried gas trenches from decades of containment operations detonated beneath the earth. The mountain became an inferno instantly. The giant below screamed, this time in pain. The buried stone giants throughout the forest began cracking apart violently beneath the heat, while the enormous entity emerging from Hollow Creek staggered backward into the collapsing ridge. The sunlight still empowered it, but the fire weakened something deeper inside it. The symbols across its body started burning white-hot beneath the flames, and the giant pale hand descending from the sky suddenly stopped moving, like it could no longer reach the valley. The radios throughout the collapsing tower screamed with static so loud blood ran from my ears. Then every voice from every old transmission spoke together one final time, "Keep it burning." The mountain exploded beneath us. Entire sections of Black Ridge collapsed inward while rivers of fire swallowed the valley below. Daniel smiled weakly through burned skin still cracking apart around his face. That's why they never stopped the wildfires. The giant entity beneath Hollow Creek roared again while chains wrapped around its body tightened, violently glowing bright beneath the flames. Not restraints. Seals. The fire had always reactivated them. The thing from the sky began retreating back into the clouds above the sunrise. Slowly. Reluctantly. Its countless eyes closed one by one across the atmosphere. But the giant beneath Hollow Creek still watched the sky furiously through the flames consuming the valley. It wasn't dead, only trapped again. For now, Black Ridge Tower finally tore free from the mountain. The entire structure collapsed sideways into the burning forest below. Daniel shoved me toward the emergency ladder hanging from the western side of the tower just before the observation room snapped apart completely. Then the floor disappeared beneath him. I watched Daniel fall backward into the inferno below, still smiling while the burning mountain swallowed him whole. The last thing I heard before the tower crashed into the forest was his voice through the radio beside me. "Calm. Exhausted. Don't let the fires die." 3 weeks later, the government declared the Black Ridge wildfire officially contained. News helicopters filmed the valley from a safe distance, showing nothing except miles of burned forest and a crater where Hollow Creek once existed. No bodies were recovered. Not from the fire crews. Not from the evacuation teams. Not even from the emergency response units sent after sunrise. The entire region was sealed off permanently afterward. Military checkpoints surrounded every highway leading into the mountains, and all public records connected to Hollow Creek disappeared within months. Officially, Black Ridge never existed, but people still talk. Truckers driving near the northern highways after midnight claim they sometimes see wildfire smoke rising from mountains that no longer appear on maps. Park rangers report emergency radio calls coming through dead frequencies from crews declared missing decades ago. And every summer, fires begin again around the same valley. No matter how many times authorities extinguish them. I know why. Because I survived. Barely. The emergency ladder carried me halfway down the ridge before Black Ridge Tower collapsed into the inferno behind me. I wandered through the burning forest until sunrise fully covered the mountains, and during those hours, I saw things inside the smoke that no human mind should survive seeing. Buried giants walking slowly between the flames, massive eyes opening beneath the earth, and something impossibly large moving far above the clouds searching for the valley below. Sometimes I still hear the radios at night. Even when nothing's turned on. Static. Breathing. And Daniel's voice whispering through the darkness, keep the fire alive. But the worst part happened yesterday. I was watching the national news when an emergency broadcast interrupted every channel across the country. The screen turned black. Static crackled softly. Then a calm voice spoke one sentence: mandatory wildfire containment protocols begin at sunset. Behind the message, I saw mountains burning in the distance. Not Black Ridge. A different state. Different forest. Different containment zone. Then the screen flashed for half a second before the signal ended. Most people probably missed it. But I didn't. Because hidden inside the smoke behind the emergency alert, something enormous was opening its eyes beneath another mountain.